Good afternoon. The first item of business this afternoon is portfolio questions, and the portfolio on this occasion is climate action, energy and transport. Quite a bit of interest in supplementary questions, so the usual plea for brevity in questions and responses. And I call question number 1, Sue Webber.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking to ensure that the CalMac vessels being constructed in Turkey are delivered on schedule and on budget.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
CMIL and the Kimmery shipyard are working hard to fully commission and deliver the MV Isle of Isla as soon as possible, and updated the NZEC committee on the 28th of November of the December target. I can assure this Parliament of CMIL, CalMac and the shipyard's strong focus during the final stages of vessel delivery. I meet CMIL regularly and have spoken of the possibility of delivering the remaining 3 vessels earlier than the 6-month intervals currently indicated. CMIL is discussing all options with the shipyard to deliver the vessels as soon as practical, and further updates will be provided. And I am pleased to report that the cost of all 4 vessels remains on budget. When the MV Isle of Isla is delivered, the communities of Isla and Jura can look forward to a more resilient and modern ferry service.
Sue Webber.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. Last week it was announced that the MV Isle of Isla was going to be delayed. And considering that that's the first of our 4 vessels being built in Turkey, can I ask what actions the Cabinet Secretary is undertaking in detail to ensure that the remaining 3 vessels are delivered on schedule, and how is she working with CMAL to ensure that these vessels can perhaps enter service more quickly and not require immediate repairs upon their arrival in Scotland?
Secretary.
Well, clearly the first vessel, in terms of the CMA and other testings, in terms of the sea trials, etc., will help in terms of identifying if there's anything needed done before the other 3 go into their sea trials, etc. So that's a very practical aspect. For my part, I regularly meet with CMAL to get accountability of how they are progressing, and also CMAL are regularly at the Kimmery Yard to make sure that progress is being made.
Supplementary, Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. The 4 ferries built in Turkey deliver precisely 0 social or industrial value to the Scottish shipbuilding industry, and CMAL have confirmed that the tender scoring for the new Northern Isles Freight Flex vessels is weighted 70% quality and 30% on cost, and only 3% of the score on the quality element relates to community benefits. This yet again fails to meet the key recommendation of the National Shipbuilding Strategy that a minimum 10% social value weighting should be applied to evaluations in new competitions, in line with Treasury Green Book guidance and the Cabinet Office social value model, so that a 30-year cross-government shipbuilding pipeline encourages participation from the UK supply chain. So will the Government move to enforce this minimum 10% social value weighting on new competitions from now on?
Cabinet Secretary.
So we have and continue to have, in terms of our community opportunity and benefit across Transport Scotland contracts, a community benefit figure that is comparable. However, the member may be aware and that there was it was only an international interest, particularly on the Northern Isle, the Northern Isle freighters that are being replaced. And in terms of that, that obviously is more of a.
Mr. Sweeney. Cabinet Secretary, please continue.
So in terms of...
Please continue.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. So in terms of international yards for international shipbuilding competitive tenders, and also in terms of what can be actually enforced internationally, he must understand the challenges in trying to enforce something in another jurisdiction.
Question 2, Katie Clark.
To ask the Scottish Government what steps it is taking to protect and improve ferry services to Scotland's island communities.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
So we set out our long-term vessels and ports plan in May. The first of 6 major vessels, MV Glen Sannox, was delivered into service earlier this year, and we expect the first of the Isla classes vessels to be delivered soon. We have commissioned 7 electric vessels for routes across the West Coast. Together, these mean that this Government has invested to renew over a third of CalMac's entire fleet. We have also awarded the new Clyde and Hebrides ferry service contract, and CML are progressing the procurement of 2 freight vessels for the Northern Isles routes serving Orkney and Shetland.
Katie Clark.
Islanders on Cumbria are concerned about CalMac proposals for scheduled maintenance windows, which could lead to a direct cut to the island's vital lifeline ferry services, and believe that both CalMac and Transport Scotland must drop these proposals, which could see services withdrawn either 6 hours per week or one 24 hour period per month. Can the Cabinet Secretary give some reassurance that both that there will be no reduction in service and capacity next year, with the 2026 summer timetable matching that of this year?
Cabinet Secretary.
So in terms of the Lara to Cymru service, obviously it will benefit from the cascade and redeployment of existing younger vessels for that route, and there's currently a new slipway and shoreside facilities for Cymru following over £10 million of Scottish Government funding. In terms of maintenance, she says proposals. One of the points of the new direct award contract is that there is engagement, particularly around things like maintenance. Maintenance is important. I was very keen to ensure that maintenance was in the contract as a regular part of the servicing of our vessels. I think that's the correct thing to do, but it has to be done with communities, and that is why it is a proposal that can then be engaged with. And I know, and I've had representations from Cymru and others, including from Mr Gibson, who's the constituency MSP, and I would encourage all communities, when they're looking at the maintenance schedules, to engage directly, and I've asked CalMac to make sure they are engaging directly.
Supplementary, Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Cabinet Secretary, there is no justification for the reduction in service to Cumbria, a service which has been excellent over many years, and people wish it to continue that way. I have to commend the Cabinet Secretary and CMAL for the £13.5 million, which is the total level of investment going into Cumbria for the new slip and associated works. But can the Cabinet Secretary give an update on phase 1 of the small vessel ferry replacement programme, and how Cumbria, in my constituency, will benefit from the cascading of vessels?
Cabinet Secretary.
So the small vessel replacement programme is progressing well. These 7 new vessels in phase 1 will help improve connectivity and resilience for island communities with their electric operation, and they'll help reduce carbon emissions in doing so. Progress is demonstrated by the steel cutting for the first vessel, which took place in September this year, 2 months ahead of the original schedule. So there's further construction milestones are taking place soon as the build programme gathers pace. And as I've indicated, the Lara to Cymru service will benefit from the cascade and redeployment of existing younger vessels for the route, which again is an improvement on top of the investment that he has mentioned for the slipway and the shoreside facilities.
Beatrice Wishart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Shared cabins were removed on the Northern Isles ferry service without consultation. No thought was given by the Scottish Government to the impact that decision would have on the concessionary voucher entitlement, which has essentially been halved. The Cabinet Secretary wrote to me saying entitlements could not be restored as it would be unaffordable and exacerbate capacity challenges. But there's no recognition of the connection between these issues and the loss of the shared cabins policy. So will the Cabinet Secretary agree to meet with me so we can discuss this issue in full again?
Cabinet Secretary.
So I have previously met with the member, and indeed in her constituency. She also knows, as I explained at that point, that it was the operator's decision in terms of the shared cabin. That was not something that the Scottish Government introduced directly, but in supporting the operator's responsibilities, I understand why they did this, and I think the member does as well. But in terms of how we can benefit the community, clearly the new contract, which I'm sure she'll have an active interest in, is being developed, and my colleague Jim Fairley is leading that for the Government. And these are the sort of issues that can and should be raised as part of that contract developed for the new contract as it is prepared.
Thank you. Question 3, Ros McCall.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government when it will publish further detail on the true cost of net zero for Scottish households.
Cabinet Secretary Gillian Martin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The draft Climate Change Plan, published on the 6th of November, is the first climate change plan in the UK to set out an assessment of both the costs and benefits of the policies within it. Most of these financial benefits are expected to accrue to households and businesses. The draft plan includes the net cost, which is financial costs minus financial benefits, of delivering its policies. This is in line with the approach used by the Scottish Fiscal Commission and the Climate Change Committee, and is estimated at £4.8 billion to the Scottish economy over the period from 2026 to 2040. We're seeking views on the presentation of costs and benefits during the plan's consultation period, and will consider these for the final publication.
Ros McCall.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer, and the much-delayed climate change plan that she mentions revealed that the SNP's net zero plan will cost the Scottish economy, as she says, £4.8 billion by 2040. But the plan itself also admits that many of the proposals are not fully costed. There's a lack of detail on how these costs will be split between households, businesses and the public sector. So will the Cabinet Secretary commit to publishing more detail on these proposals, including how much the average Scottish household will be left out of pocket by the plan?
Cabinet Secretary.
So this is a 15-year plan, and uncertainty around UK government action, technological advancements and market decisions make the distribution of costs extremely challenging to estimate. We have set out the costs in line with the legislation. We know the scale of change that's needed for the next part of our net zero journey is significant, and delivering our net zero target by 2045 will require transformation of our economy and society, underpinned by sustained investment, both public and private. But I want to end by quoting Professor Graham Roy, who's the chair of the Scottish Fiscal Commission, who said, in the quote, "Doing nothing, not responding to the challenge of climate change, will be far more expensive and damage to the public finances than investing in net zero. It is simply not an option." I agree wholeheartedly with Professor Roy.
Thank you. I've got a number of supplementaries. Hopefully they'll be brief. First, Bill Kidd.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Cabinet Secretary, it is vital that we ensure that Scotland's buildings become warmer, greener and cheaper. However, the high cost of energy continues to be prohibitive to many energy-efficient heating upgrades. Do you agree that we need to see substantial reform to the energy system to achieve affordable climate goals? And can you give any more detail on the Scottish Government's work?
Cabinet Secretary.
Bill Kay is absolutely right. In an energy-rich nation like Scotland, no household should be struggling to heat their home. Measures announced by the Chancellor will reduce average bills by only £12 a month, while significantly scaling back investment in energy efficiency and clean heating. And these are the very actions that would cut bills permanently. Most powers here are reserved to the UK Government, so it is important that they use their full powers and levers at their disposal to make clean heat more affordable, and it is vital that there is further reform to the electricity and gas markets in that regard. Scottish Government's work towards energy efficiency. We recently consulted on proposals for homes and in the domestic private rented sector to reach new EPC heat retention rating band C by the end of 2033, with this applying to new tenancies from 2028. We also recently introduced new EPC regulations, which will bring an improved EPC rating system into force. So taking steps to ensure poor energy efficiency is no longer a driver of fuel poverty, which positively contributes to the eradication of child poverty.
We'll need brevity in questions, but also in the responses. Sarah Boyack.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. There's a cost of lack of action. Very much agree on that. And looking at that on a local level is really important. Will the Cabinet Secretary also comment on why we're not getting the same focus on the homes that are vulnerable to flooding? It's 284,000 at the moment, and the Scottish Government's own website says another 100,000 over the next few decades. So what will be done to ramp up support for households that are currently at risk?
Cabinet Secretary.
A bit of a tangential question, if you don't mind, about flooding in there. But it is important, and most of the flood protection schemes are actually in the hands of local authorities, who are given substantial funding to put them into action. But obviously, given that the initial question wasn't about flooding specifically, I may have to write to Sarah Boyack to give her more detail on that.
And Pam Duncan-Glancy.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer, and I refer members to my register of interest. I met with local homes and constituents in Glasgow this week who spoke passionately of the cooperative retrofit model. This model works in communities to share information on options for retrofitting for all income groups. And so could I ask the Minister, is she aware of the co-op work in this space, and what support could she provide to help communities and local industry replicate and adapt the retrofit cooperative model for their area, including community organising, peer support, specialist consultancy and start-up grants?
Cabinet Secretary.
I'm always very keen to hear from action that's happening on the ground, which can be replicated throughout the country. I certainly will take an interest in this particular scheme, and I will pass on the comments to Manny McCallan, who of course is the Cabinet Secretary for Housing and also has levers in place with regards to the housing portfolio.
Question 4, David Torrance.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its responses to the Road Safety Management Safe System Capacity Building Programme in Scotland being awarded the Prince Michael International Road Safety Award.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
I am very pleased that Transport Scotland have received this prestigious award. This government recognises that in order to really embed the safe system approach to road safety, leadership and coordination need to be set from the top, and that is why we invested in this programme for the people of Scotland. It is critical that we continue to change the road safety culture within our country, and the programme comprised of publishing the world's first safe system manual for practitioners, a cultural maturity playbook, a bespoke training for over 500 of our partners, and the successes of this project solidify Scotland's position as being world leaders in safe system delivery, and it is vital that we continue to work with partners at all levels to reach our vision of Scotland having the best road safety performance in the world by 2030.
David Torrance.
This award is welcome recognition for Scotland, but we must never lose sight of the fact that one life lost on our roads is one too many. As the Government continues to work towards its long-term vision of no one being killed or seriously injured on Scotland's roads by 2050, can I ask the Cabinet Secretary how the Scottish Government will build on its work already undertaken as we build towards realising this vision?
Cabinet Secretary.
So, any life lost on our roads is one too many. We are committed to that Vision Zero ambition. We need to build on those foundations. It's why we've put record levels of funding into road safety, and that was £48 million for this year. Now, that includes measures to reduce casualties across the trunk road network. It also helps local authorities through the Road Safety Improvement Fund. It's helping 20-mile-per-hour rollouts. It's targeting safety cameras and, importantly, delivering national driver behaviour change campaigns. We are having a mid-term review to assess where we go next with it. Yesterday I chaired the National Road Safety Partnership along with Police Scotland, local authorities, a variety of different partners and also from Public Health coming together to help drive that improvement. And I personally have taken a very keen interest, and I think in terms of that leadership we will start to see that change.
Question 5, Karen Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what assessment it has made of the impact of the Energy Profits Levy on energy jobs and the energy supply chain in the North East.
Cabinet Secretary Gillian Martin.
Thank you. The UK Government's retention of the Energy Profits Levy in its current form will continue to hit jobs and investment across the whole of Scotland and the whole energy sector. These reserve policy decisions are driving an accelerated decline of North Sea oil and gas before renewable alternatives are sufficiently developed, placing a just energy transition at risk. The Scottish Government continues to monitor and consider a range of evidence in relation to Scotland's energy sector. As part of this approach, we review reports on employment from the industry, trade unions and other bodies. Analysis set out in a recent joint letter from OE UK and Scottish Renewables found that replacing the Energy Profits Levy with a fairer fiscal regime could unlock £40 billion of investment and safeguard 160,000 jobs across the UK.
Karen Adam.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. The Energy Profits Levy threatens jobs and investment in the North East, particularly in my constituency of Banffshire and Buchan Coast. Yet Scotland produces a vast surplus of low-cost energy. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that it should be unthinkable for an energy-rich Scotland to have anything other than energy-rich Scots, and that Westminster UK Government control is what stands in the way of that?
Cabinet Secretary.
I absolutely agree with Karen Adams' assessment of the situation. In an energy-rich nation like Scotland, no household, as I said before, should be struggling to heat their home. No business in Scotland should be struggling to pay their bills and to keep their head above water. The UK Labour Government promised that they would reduce bills by £300 when they came to office. However, choices made by the Chancellor to significantly scale back investment in energy efficiency and clean heating will not permanently cut bills. But the UK Government's damaging approach to the Energy Profits Levy means that Scotland's energy industry is facing an existential threat. The First Minister made it clear that the decision to extend the EPL to 2030 threatens tens of thousands of jobs across the UK energy sector, places the entire energy transition at risk when he met the Prime Minister at the British Irish Council on the 5th of December.
Douglas Lumpkin.
Presiding Officer, I agree that the Energy Profits Levy is a disaster and threatens jobs. But so does the Scottish Government's presumption against new oil and gas. Now, the Cabinet Secretary doesn't want to debate energy strategy next week, so can she tell me when the Scottish Government will bring forward the energy strategy, and will it remove the disastrous presumption against new oil and gas?
Cabinet Secretary.
The judgments and issues that are in the Energy Strategy and Just Transition Plan are informed and influenced by a range of ongoing developments in the UK Government's energy policy and recent court decisions. So these include, but are not limited to, the announcement set out by the UK Government about the North Sea Future Plan, which we have had no advance sight of. So we're taking sufficient time to analyse and reflect on those developments and their impact on Scotland, a point that I have made many times before to Douglas Lumsden.
And Mercedes Vial.
The Energy Profits Levy has raised more than £11 billion for the public purse since its introduction and is forecast to raise a further £11 billion by 2030, redistributing excessive profits from energy giants to those struggling in fuel poverty, including in the North East region. Does the Minister not agree with Great British Energy's founding premise that the people should have a right to own and benefit from our natural resources? And won't she join me in welcoming the launch of GB Energy's £1 billion supply chain initiative, Energy Engineered in the UK, to grow the domestic supply chain and create jobs here in Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Mercedes Vial might be a cheerleader for GB Energy, and fair play to her. If she wants to get behind what GB Energy are doing, then that is absolutely her right. But £11 billion that's gone onto the Exchequer as a result of the EPL, wouldn't it be great if that was ring-fenced in terms of actually decarbonising our gas supply? Would it be great if that went into Just Transition? Wouldn't that be great if it actually brought forward a great deal of investment in low-carbon opportunities, which would help the Just Transition? I don't know where that £11 billion is going, frankly. And until we actually have some details on that, then maybe we're all in the dark a little bit about what the EPL is actually doing, other than destroying the jobs in the North East, because it is a tax on the people and the sector of the North East of Scotland.
Thank you. Question 6, Eleanor Whittam.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on pedestrian safety improvements.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hiss.
The Scottish Government is committed to enhancing safety across Scotland's road network. The Road Safety Framework to 2030 sets out a vision for Scotland to have the best road safety performance in the world by 2030. This contains mode and user-specific targets focused on our priority areas, including pedestrians. In the 2025-26 financial year, the Scottish Government has invested a record £48 million in road safety, alongside significant investment in sustainable and active travel programmes to promote pedestrian safety. A dedicated stakeholder group has also been established to monitor risks, identify emerging trends and develop targeted measures for pedestrians and other vulnerable road users. And these actions demonstrate our ongoing commitment to making Scotland's roads safer for everyone.
Eleanor Whittam.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for her answer. Community councils and local groups along the A77 in Ballantrae, Girvan, Kirkoswald and Minishan, my constituency, have worked tirelessly with me to press for pedestrian safety improvements, and I welcome the mitigations that Transport Scotland is now putting in place. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that this kind of community-led campaign work is to be commended, and that even greater progress can be achieved when national and local governments work together hand in hand with our communities?
Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, I do commend these communities and the campaigning for road safety improvements. And in terms of that working together, in terms of identifying the individual issues, Transport Scotland is working with local campaign groups and indeed with local authorities, and systematically working through some of the issues. I heard directly about the benefits, for example, that will come to Ballantrae, and also some of the issues around Kirkoswald. And I think these issues can also be supported through the Road Safety Improvement Fund, and that's £14.5 million that does deliver targeted road safety schemes. Sometimes it's about junctions, sometimes it's about pedestrian aspects. So the road safety framework includes local partnership forums, and that helps with best practice, it helps partnership working, but also I think communities that live in those areas know best, they have that experience, and certainly for the A77 I'm very pleased to see progress being made.
And question 7, Finlay Carson.
To ask the Scottish Government what research or assessment is carried out in the south west of Scotland to understand the environmental impact of recent or planned road improvement projects.
Cabinet Secretary.
So all trunk road maintenance and improvement projects, including those in the South West, undergo environmental assessment to identify potential impacts and ensure appropriate mitigation is implemented. Environmental considerations are central to the design and assessment process of all our road projects, and where projects meet the criteria, they are subject to screening to determine whether statutory environmental impact assessment is required. If further assessment is required, the findings are published in a report and subjected to statutory consultation before Scottish ministers make a decision on whether the project should proceed.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for a response. A strategic and economic impact report published by 3 local authorities makes it crystal clear that dualling the A75 and A77 could unlock 95 million tonnes in carbon dioxide savings and unlock $5 billion in benefits, slashing haulage costs and cutting journey times. Yet years of promises, the Scottish Government has produced little or no timetable, no budget and no plan. And only last week, Ferry and Haulage Company said nothing less than a dualling of the bypass for Springholm and Crocketford were acceptable. So why is this Government content with endless reviews while businesses, communities and climate targets pay the price? Will the Cabinet Secretary replace spin with spades and commit to a funded, time-bound programme with clear milestones and road improvement plans for the A77 and A75 and report back to Parliament? Cabinet Secretary.
So, since 2007, we've invested in both the A75 and the A77, £50 million for the A75, £64 million for the A77, A75 schemes, overtaking opportunities, Newton Stewart, Barfield to
Secretary, could you please resume your seat? There have been a number of occasions where questions have been asked and then questioners with some others have then joined in heckling throughout the answers. We are going to listen to the questions and the response with courtesy. Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, President Officer. I think when the chamber is a bit empty, people perhaps don't realise how the voices do carry. And in addressing some of the A77 schemes, the Hagston Climbing Lane, the Glenapp wide single carriageway, Park End to Benane, Simonton to Bog End and, of course, the Mayball bypass. You talked about the A75 Springholm to Crocketford, where the Scottish Government is leading on the design work for that, again consulting with the locals on that, and they are looking at different aspects, including the dual carriageway potential for that and where that might be, whether it should be single carriageway or the issues around there. And there's also initial and immediate issues around safety, safety measures around Springford and Crockford just now, which I think he's also asked me about and wanted to see. So these things are happening. I do think in terms of the connections, I absolutely recognise the economic importance of the A75, not just obviously to the local area, but primarily as identified in that Union connectivity route to Northern Ireland and on to Ireland for exports. And I absolutely understand that. And actually, he makes the point about road improvements that actually can help save fuel in terms of how that is utilised in some of the routes. So I understand those issues. Economic issues have an impact in the business plans as well as environmental assessments, and I have given a flavour of what has been happening in the South West.
Thank you. We've run over time, but we have a bit of time in hand this afternoon, so I'm going to call question 8, Craig Hoy.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what assessment it has made of the long-term impact of battery energy storage systems on biodiversity and fire safety and the long-term landscape and visual impact.
Cabinet Secretary Gillian Martin.
Thank you. Where new development proposals come forward, potential impacts on communities, nature, landscape and visual amenity, including cumulative effects, are important considerations in the decision-making process. All applications are subject to site-specific assessments. The Scottish Government has commissioned a scoping study on the potential environmental impacts of operating battery storage, with work expected to complete early next year. However, health and safety law is reserved to the UK Government and regulated by the Health and Safety Executive. The Scottish Fire and Rescue Service continually reviews its operational response to emerging technology, including battery storage, to keep communities safe.
Craig Hoy.
And yet more and more are being passed. In Dumfriesshire, concern is mounting over battery storage developments, including the Belridding battery energy storage system near to Thorwald and Milton Farm near Beatick. Residents are rightly concerned that these developments are in the wrong location, with, for example, Milton Farm being close to the A74, which would be severely impacted by smoke in the event of a fire. What is the Minister doing to give communities a greater say when it comes to large-scale energy projects like these? And why won't the Government support my call for an immediate moratorium moratorium on further onshore large-scale renewables in areas which now feel battered and bruised and at risk as a result of the onward march of battery storage, turbines and mega-pylons?
Cabinet Secretary.
So I'm not going to comment on any applications where the potential are in the system. A submission by officials on the 15th of May set out a proposed approach to improving the policy understanding of BESS through internal research to help inform our thinking on potential policy positions on the technology, partly in response to community and political concerns about the framework that underpins BESS development. So officials have proposed the publication of an initial statement and a call for evidence early next year to inform future policy statement on the technology.
Brief supplementary, Paul McLennan.
Officer, in order to maximise the benefit of Scotland's renewable energies and resources and reach net zero, it's vital that we invest in storage capacity. Can the Cabinet Secretary say any more about the role storage systems play in our renewables mix and how the Scottish Government is working to make sure our local communities see the benefit of local infrastructure?
Briefly, Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the member's right about storage playing an important role in managing the variability and intermittency of renewable energy sources and balancing the grid, enhancing security supply and ensuring that we can store energy instead of paying operators to turn the generation off. There are currently just over a gigawatt of operational storage in Scotland, mainly from pumped storage hydroelectricity. To achieve our net zero targets, we'll need more. I'm confident we can achieve this. There's currently a strong pipeline of projects, not all in BESS, but in other areas of storage as well. But communities should share directly in the benefits of energy projects, including storage. Around £30 million was offered in community benefits last year across different energy projects. We're refreshing the national guidance on this, the good practice principles, to ensure sustainable, meaningful outcomes from Scotland's energy transition.
Thank you. With that, we conclude portfolio questions. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next item of business to allow front benches to change.